The ceremony began with silence. Rows of soldiers stood at attention, honoring a fallen friend. Then a distant hum built overhead. For jets. One veered skyward, breaking away alone. Gasps rose from the ground as they realized the name on that tail number. Her plane, the pilot they'd once overlooked, had just become the tribute no one would forget. From which corner of the world are you witnessing this incredible moment of honor today? If you believe that true recognition sometimes comes when we least expect it, consider subscribing for more stories that reveal how dedication and service create their own profound moments of tribute. The morning mist hung low over Dover Air Force Base as hundreds of uniformed personnel assembled on the flight line for a memorial service that would honor Technical Sergeant Michael Rodriguez, a loadmaster who had been killed in action during a cargo mission over Afghanistan 3 weeks earlier. At 0900 hours, the formation stood in perfect ranks across the concrete apron, their dress blue uniforms creating geometric patterns of military precision against the gray Delaware sky. The ceremony would conclude with a missing man formation, for aircraft flying overhead with one breaking away to symbolize the departed serviceman's final flight. Among the pilots preparing for the flyover was Captain Sarah Chen, a 31-year-old C-17 Globemaster pilot who had accumulated over 1,800 flight hours during 2 combat deployments. Despite her extensive experience and exemplary service record, Chen had consistently been overlooked for high-visibility assignments and leadership positions, relegated to routine cargo missions, while her male counterparts received recognition and advancement opportunities that seemed to elude her despite comparable or superior performance. The missing man formation would be flown by 4 C-17 aircraft, with Chen assigned as the number 4 pilot, the position that would break away from the formation to represent Rodriguez's final departure. It was a role that carried profound symbolic meaning, requiring precise timing and emotional composure to execute the maneuver that would provide closure for hundreds of grieving military personnel and family members. Major James Thompson, the flight lead for the memorial formation, conducted the final briefing in the Squadron Operations Center, reviewing timing, altitudes, and formation positions that would create the solemn aerial tribute. At 38 years old with over 2,400 flight hours, Thompson had led numerous ceremonial flights, but the missing man formation remained one of aviation's most emotionally challenging missions. Today's flyover honors the memory of Technical Sergeant Rodriguez, who gave his life in service to our nation, Thompson announced to the assembled pilots. This formation will be observed by Rodriguez's family, his squadron, and the entire Dover community. Our execution must be flawless. We owe that to his memory and to everyone who knew him. Chen listened to Thompson's briefing while reviewing the procedures she would execute during the critical moment when her aircraft would break away from the formation. The maneuver required climbing away from the other 3 aircraft at a precise moment, creating the visual representation of a fallen comrade's departure that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Chen, you'll be flying Rodriguez's usual aircraft, tail number 02-1108, Thompson continued, consulting his flight roster. Rodriguez flew his last mission in that aircraft, so it's appropriate that it represents him during today's ceremony. The assignment carried additional emotional weight for Chen, who had flown multiple missions with Rodriguez and respected his professionalism and dedication. She had specifically requested to fly his aircraft during the memorial, believing it would provide appropriate honor to a colleague who had died serving their shared mission of supporting combat operations worldwide. Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Williams, the squadron commander, joined the briefing to emphasize the ceremony's significance and the responsibility each pilot carried in executing a tribute worthy of Rodriguez's sacrifice. At 44 years old with over 3,200 flight hours, Williams had commanded the squadron for 18 months, while working to address systemic issues of recognition and advancement that had affected several outstanding female pilots. Today's memorial service will be attended by General Martinez from Air Mobility Command Headquarters, along with Rodriguez's family and friends from throughout the military community, Williams announced. This flyover represents not just our squadron's tribute, but the Air Force's collective respect for Rodriguez's service and sacrifice. Chen appreciated Williams's leadership and support, Recognizing that the squadron commander had consistently advocated for fair treatment and recognition of all personnel regardless of gender or background. Williams had been instrumental in ensuring that Chun received appropriate mission assignments and consideration for advancement, though progress remained frustratingly slow despite Chen's proven competence and dedication. The selection for the missing man formation represented the first high-visibility assignment Chun had received in over 2 years of exemplary service. While she was honored to represent Rodriguez during his final symbolic flight, she couldn't help but wonder why it had taken a memorial service for her capabilities to be recognized and utilized in a meaningful ceremony. The 4C-17 pilots completed their individual aircraft inspections and pre-flight procedures, with each aircraft representing millions of dollars of sophisticated military technology that would create the aerial tribute. Chen's aircraft, Rodriguez's former assignment, carried special significance as the platform that would perform the symbolic departure representing his final flight. As Chun conducted her exterior inspection of aircraft 02-1108, she noticed a small memorial plaque that had been installed near the crew entrance door, honoring Rodriguez's service and sacrifice. The plaque included his photograph, service dates, and a brief inscription acknowledging his contributions to the squadron's mission accomplishment and his dedication to the loadmaster profession. The sight of Rodriguez's photograph brought back memories of their shared missions over Afghanistan and Iraq, where his professionalism and attention to detail had made him one of the most respected loadmasters in the squadron. Chen remembered his infectious enthusiasm for flying and his genuine concern for the soldiers who depended on their cargo deliveries for survival and mission success. Rodriguez would have appreciated today's ceremony, observed Staff Sergeant Martinez, the crew chief responsible for maintaining aircraft 02-1108. He always took pride in his aircraft and his mission. Flying the missing man formation in his bird seems like the right way to honor his memory. Chen nodded, understanding the emotional connection between aircrew members and the aircraft they flew regularly. Rodriguez had spent hundreds of hours in 02-1108, loading cargo and ensuring safe transport of critical supplies to combat zones throughout Afghanistan and Iraq. Today's flight would be his symbolic final mission, and Chen felt the weight of responsibility to execute a tribute worthy of his service and sacrifice. The morning air was crisp and clear as the 4C-17 aircraft prepared for departure, their massive engines beginning the startup sequence that would power the memorial formation. Chun completed her pre-flight checklist with extra attention to detail, knowing that any mechanical problems could compromise the ceremony that hundreds of people were depending on to provide closure and honor Rodriguez's memory. Dover ground, memorial flight ready to taxi. Thompson transmitted from the lead aircraft, beginning the coordination that would position the 4C-17s for their ceremonial takeoff and flyover. Memorial flight, Dover ground, taxi to runway 01 via taxiway Alpha. Contact tower when ready for departure. Winds calm, visibility 10 miles, altimeter 30.12. The 4C-17 aircraft taxied to the runway in formation, their massive engines creating the distinctive sound that had become synonymous with American military airlift capability. Chen positioned her aircraft in the number 4 slot, maintaining precise spacing and alignment that would create the visual impact necessary for the memorial formation. During the taxi, Chen reflected on Rodriguez's final mission, which had been a routine cargo delivery to Forward Operating Base Chapman in Afghanistan. The aircraft had been struck by enemy fire during approach, killing Rodriguez and wounding 2 other crew members before the pilot managed to complete an emergency landing. Rodriguez had died protecting the cargo compartment and ensuring that critical supplies reached soldiers who desperately needed them. Dover Tower, memorial flight ready for departure, formation takeoff. Thompson transmitted, beginning the formal process that would launch the tribute flight. Memorial flight, Dover Tower, cleared for takeoff runway 01. Winds calm, altimeter 30.12. Godspeed on your mission today. The tower controller's final comment reflected the emotional weight that surrounded the mission, acknowledging that this was not routine flight training, but a solemn tribute to a fallen airman. The formation accelerated down the runway with Thompson leading, followed by the number 2 and 3 aircraft, with Chun maintaining position as the number 4 pilot who would eventually break away. The sensation of flying in formation with 3 other C-17 aircraft was both exhilarating and sobering. Chen had participated in training formations before, but never for a memorial service that would honor a fallen colleague. The responsibility of representing Rodriguez during his final symbolic flight added emotional weight to every aspect of the mission. The 4 C-17 aircraft lifted off simultaneously, climbing into the clear Delaware sky while maintaining the precise formation that would create the intended visual impact for observers on the ground. Chen concentrated on maintaining exact position relative to the lead aircraft, knowing that formation discipline was essential for both safety and ceremonial effectiveness. Memorial flight, contact departure on 119.1. The tower controller transmitted as they climbed through 1,000 feet above the airfield. Memorial flight switching to departure. Thompson acknowledged, leading the formation through the radio frequency change that would transfer them to air traffic control for the ceremonial flight. As they climbed to their assigned altitude of 3,000 feet, Chen could see Dover Air Force Base below, with hundreds of uniformed personnel assembled on the flight line for Rodriguez's memorial service. The sight of so many people gathered to honor her fallen colleague reinforced the importance of executing a perfect tribute that would provide appropriate closure for everyone who had known and worked with Rodriguez. The missing man formation would fly a specific pattern over Dover Air Force Base, timed to coincide with the memorial service's conclusion when hundreds of military personnel and Rodriguez's family would be observing the tribute. Chen reviewed her portion of the mission, preparing for the moment when she would break away from the formation in a climbing turn that would symbolize Rodriguez's final departure. Departure control, memorial flight with you, climbing to 3,000 feet for ceremonial flyover. Thompson reported to the air traffic controller who would coordinate their airspace usage. Memorial flight, radar contact. You're cleared for the published memorial pattern. Maintain 3,000 feet until the break. All other aircraft have been cleared from your operating area. The coordination between air traffic control and the memorial formation demonstrated the respect and support that the entire aviation community provided for ceremonies honoring fallen aircrew members. Chen felt honored to be part of a tradition that brought together military and civilian aviation professionals in tribute to those who had made the ultimate sacrifice. The formation leveled at 3,000 feet and began flying the predetermined pattern that would bring them over the memorial service at the precise moment when their tribute would have maximum emotional impact. Chen could see Dover Air Force Base below, with the flight line covered by formations of personnel attending Rodriguez's service. During their holding pattern, Chen had time to reflect on her relationship with Rodriguez and the missions they had flown together. He had been one of the few squadron members who had consistently treated her as an equal, never questioning her competence or suggesting that she couldn't handle challenging assignments. His loss represented not just the death of a colleague, but the loss of an ally who had supported her professional development. 5 minutes to the memorial site, Thompson announced over the formation frequency. Maintain precise positioning for the flyover. Chen tightened her formation position, ensuring that the 4 aircraft would create the intended visual effect as they passed over the ceremony. The missing man formation was one of military aviation's most moving traditions, representing the final flight of departed aircrew members through the symbolic departure of one aircraft from the formation. The precision required for the formation was demanding, with Chen having to maintain exact spacing and altitude while preparing for the brake maneuver that would take her aircraft away from the group. Any deviation from proper position could compromise the visual impact of the tribute or create safety hazards for the other aircraft in the formation. 2 minutes to the memorial site, Thompson updated, his voice carrying the gravity of their mission. Remember, we're flying for Rodriguez today. Make him proud. As they approached the memorial service location, Chen could see hundreds of people arranged in formation on the flight line, their faces turned skyward in anticipation of the flyover that would conclude Rodriguez's memorial ceremony. The sight strengthened her resolve to execute a perfect tribute worthy of her fallen colleague and the family members who were mourning his loss. Among the assembled crowd, Chen could identify Rodriguez's widow and 2 young children, who had traveled from their home in Texas to attend the memorial service. The knowledge that Rodriguez's family was watching added emotional weight to the mission, reminding Chun that her performance would provide lasting memories for people who were grieving the loss of a husband and father. Memorial site in sight, Thompson reported. Prepare for the flyover. The 4C-17 aircraft approached the memorial service in perfect formation, their engines creating the deep harmonic sound that would announce their arrival to the assembled mourners. Chun maintained position while preparing for the brake maneuver that would transform their formation from 4 aircraft to 3, with her aircraft climbing away to represent Rodriguez's departure. The sight of the memorial service from 3,000 feet was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Hundreds of uniformed personnel stood in perfect formation, their collective presence creating a visual tribute to Rodriguez's service and sacrifice. The ceremony represented the military's commitment to honoring fallen personnel and supporting their families during times of loss. Stand by for the break, Thompson announced as they neared the designated point where Chun would separate from the formation. Chun positioned her hand on the throttles, ready to add power for the climbing turn that would take her aircraft away from the formation at the precise moment that would create the intended symbolism. The maneuver required exact timing and smooth execution to achieve the emotional impact that made missing man formations so meaningful. The moment of the break represented the culmination of weeks of preparation and the emotional weight of honoring a fallen colleague. Chun felt the responsibility of representing Rodriguez during his final symbolic flight, knowing that her performance would be observed by his family, friends, and colleagues who needed closure and comfort during their time of grief. Break, 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 Thompson commanded as they passed directly over the memorial service. Chun advanced her throttles and pulled back on the control yoke, initiating a steep climbing turn that carried her aircraft away from the formation, while the other 3 C-17s continued straight ahead. The maneuver created the visual representation of a departed comrade's final flight, with Chun's aircraft climbing toward the heavens, while the remaining formation continued earthward. The sensation of breaking away from the formation was both technically challenging and emotionally overwhelming. Chun felt the aircraft respond to her control inputs as she climbed away from the other C-17s, creating the separation that symbolized Rodriguez's departure from his earthly duties. The maneuver represented years of training and experience coming together in a moment of profound significance. As she climbed away from the other aircraft, Chun could see the memorial service below, with hundreds of uniformed personnel observing the flyover that honored Rodriguez's memory. The emotional weight of the moment was overwhelming as she realized that her aircraft, Rodriguez's former assignment, was providing the final tribute to a colleague who had died serving their shared mission. From her climbing aircraft, Chun could see the 3 remaining C-17s continuing their flyover while maintaining perfect formation. The visual contrast between her solitary aircraft and the continuing formation created the powerful symbolism that made missing man formations such effective tributes to fallen aircrew members. The 3 remaining aircraft continued their flyover, while Chun maintained her climbing turn, creating the separation that symbolized Rodriguez's departure from his earthly duties. The formation would reform after the memorial flyover, but for this moment, Chun's solitary aircraft represented the transition from life to eternal rest that defined the missing man tradition. Beautiful break. 4. Thompson transmitted as Chun continued her climb away from the formation. Rodriguez would have been proud of that tribute. Chun felt tears forming in her eyes as she acknowledged Thompson's comment, understanding that she had successfully provided the aerial tribute that Rodriguez's memory deserved. The mission represented more than professional duty. It was a personal farewell to a colleague and friend whose loss affected everyone who had served with him. The climbing turn continued as Chun maintained her separation from the formation, providing the visual representation of Rodriguez's final departure that would remain in the memories of everyone who observed the ceremony. The missing man formation was designed to provide closure while honoring the service and sacrifice of fallen military personnel. As she reached the predetermined altitude for the brake maneuver, Chun began a gentle turn that would eventually reunite her with the other 3 aircraft for their return to Dover Air Force Base. The symbolic portion of the mission was complete, but the emotional impact would continue affecting everyone who had participated in or observed the memorial flyover. Memorial flight, rejoin for return to Dover. Thompson transmitted, beginning the coordination that would reform the 4 aircraft formation for their landing back at the base. Chen acknowledged the transmission and began maneuvering to rejoin the formation, but the significance of the memorial break continued resonating in her mind. The opportunity to honor Rodriguez through the missing man formation had been both professionally challenging and personally meaningful, representing the kind of high-visibility assignment she had long deserved but rarely received. As she rejoined the formation for their return to Dover Air Force Base, Chen reflected on the honor of flying the missing man position during Rodriguez's memorial. Despite being overlooked for other high-visibility assignments, she had been entrusted with the most emotionally significant role in today's ceremony, representing her fallen colleague during his final symbolic flight. The flight back to Dover proceeded in formation, with the 4C-17 aircraft maintaining the professional discipline that had characterized their memorial flyover. Chen remained focused on formation flying while processing the emotions of having completed the most meaningful mission of her career to date. The formation landed at Dover and taxied to the flight line, where hundreds of personnel remained assembled following the memorial service. As the pilots shut down their engines and prepared to leave their aircraft, Chen noticed unusual activity near her aircraft, with senior officers and enlisted personnel gathering around 02-1108. The crowd gathering around Chen's aircraft included General Martinez from Air Mobility Command Headquarters, Rodriguez's family members, and dozens of squadron personnel who had observed the memorial flyover. The attention was unprecedented for Chen, who was accustomed to completing missions without recognition or acknowledgement from senior leadership. General Martinez, the Air Mobility Command leader who had attended Rodriguez's memorial service, approached Chen as she completed her post-flight procedures. At 52 years old with over 4,000 flight hours, Martinez had commanded airlift operations throughout his career while working to ensure that recognition and advancement opportunities were distributed fairly among all qualified personnel. Captain Chen, Martinez said, I observed your portion of today's flyover from the memorial service. That was one of the most precise and emotionally appropriate missing man breaks I've witnessed during my career. You provided exactly the tribute that Rodriguez's memory deserved. The recognition from such a senior commander carried special significance for Chen, who had rarely received acknowledgement for her professional performance despite consistently excellent results. Martinez's comments validated not only her execution of today's mission, but her broader contributions to the squadron and the Air Force. Sir, it was an honor to represent Rodriguez during his final flight, Chen replied. He was an outstanding loadmaster and a good friend. Flying his aircraft during the memorial felt like the appropriate way to honor his service. Your dedication to honoring Rodriguez's memory was evident in every aspect of today's mission, Martinez continued. But I also want to discuss your broader service record and future opportunities within Air Mobility Command. The conversation that followed would fundamentally change Chen's career trajectory, with Martinez acknowledging that her performance and potential had been underutilized despite her obvious qualifications for increased responsibility and recognition. He outlined opportunities for advancement and leadership roles that would finally provide the career progression her service record warranted. I've been reviewing your file, Captain Chen, Martinez explained. Your performance ratings have been consistently excellent. Your flight hours and experience are impressive, and your professional conduct has been exemplary. It's clear that you haven't received the recognition and advancement opportunities that your record justifies. The acknowledgement that her capabilities had been underutilized was both validating and frustrating for Chen, who had wondered whether her lack of advancement reflected deficiencies in her performance or systemic issues within the promotion system. Martinez's comments confirmed that the problem had been institutional rather than personal. I'm recommending you for promotion to major and assignment as a squadron operations officer, Martinez announced. Your performance during today's memorial, combined with your overall service record, demonstrates exactly the kind of leadership we need in our operations. The recognition represented validation that Chen had sought throughout her career, acknowledgement that her service and capabilities warranted advancement and increased responsibility. More importantly, it demonstrated that her dedication to honoring Rodriguez's memory had revealed qualities that had previously been overlooked by the promotion system. Lieutenant Colonel Williams joined the conversation, adding her endorsement of Chen's qualifications and expressing satisfaction that higher leadership was finally recognizing the talent that had been evident within her squadron for years. Captain Chen has consistently been one of our most reliable and professional pilots, Williams told Martinez. Her selection for today's missing man position reflected our confidence in her abilities, and her execution validated that assessment completely. The support from her squadron commander added weight to Martinez's recognition, demonstrating that Chen's capabilities had been evident to local leadership even when they weren't acknowledged by higher headquarters. The combination of excellent performance and strong leadership endorsement created a compelling case for advancement and increased responsibility. Rodriguez's widow, Maria Rodriguez, approached Chen with tears in her eyes and gratitude in her voice. Captain Chen, thank you for giving my husband such a beautiful final flight. Watching your aircraft climb away from the formation was both heartbreaking and comforting. You honored his memory perfectly. The personal appreciation from Rodriguez's family carried more emotional weight than any professional recognition Chen had received. Knowing that her tribute had provided comfort to Rodriguez's widow and children validated the emotional investment she had made in executing a perfect memorial flyover. As the memorial service participants began dispersing, Chen found herself surrounded by colleagues and friends who wanted to express their appreciation for her role in honoring Rodriguez's memory. The missing man formation had provided closure for many people who had served with Rodriguez, and Chen's precise execution had made the tribute especially meaningful. That was perfect, Captain, said Master Sergeant Johnson, who had worked closely with Rodriguez during numerous cargo missions. You gave him exactly the send-off he deserved. Flying his aircraft during the memorial was a nice touch that shows you understood what he meant to all of us. The personal recognition from enlisted personnel who had known Rodriguez professionally carried special emotional weight for Chen, confirming that her tribute had achieved its intended purpose of honoring a fallen colleague's memory while providing comfort to those who mourned his loss. Staff Sergeant Martinez, the crew chief for Aircraft 02-1108, approached Chen with a small package containing items that had belonged to Rodriguez during his service with the squadron. The package included his personal checklist, a squadron patch he had worn during his final mission, and a letter he had written to his family before departing for Afghanistan. Rodriguez's family wanted you to have these, Martinez explained. They were at the memorial service and observed your flyover. They specifically requested that the pilot who flew the missing man position receive these mementos of his service. Chen accepted the package with deep appreciation, understanding that Rodriguez's family had entrusted her with personal items that represented his dedication and sacrifice. The gesture demonstrated that her tribute had touched the people who mattered most, the family members who would forever mourn Rodriguez's loss. Over the following weeks, Chen's role in Rodriguez's memorial ceremony became part of Dover Air Force Base folklore, retold as an example of how dedication and professionalism could create profound moments of tribute that honored fallen colleagues, while inspiring continued service among survivors. The missing man formation had accomplished its intended purpose of providing closure and honoring Rodriguez's memory, but it had also revealed qualities in Chen that led to the career recognition she had long deserved. Her promotion to major and assignment as operations officer reflected acknowledgement that her capabilities extended far beyond routine flying duties. Today's ceremony demonstrated something important about character and dedication, General Martinez observed during Chen's promotion ceremony several months later. The way someone honors fallen colleagues often reveals their own values and potential for leadership. Chen's new position as operations officer provided opportunities to influence squadron culture and ensure that all personnel received appropriate recognition for their contributions, regardless of background or gender. Her experience of being overlooked despite excellent performance motivated her to advocate for fair treatment of all squadron members. The aircraft she had flown during Rodriguez's memorial, 02-1108, was eventually retired from active service and placed on permanent display at the Air Mobility Command Museum, with a plaque acknowledging both Rodriguez's service and the memorial flight that had honored his memory. Years later, as Colonel Chen commanded her own wing, she would continue the tradition of selecting the most qualified and dedicated pilots to fly missing man formations during memorial services, understanding that these tributes required both technical proficiency and emotional connection to the service members being honored. The missing man formation represents more than ceremonial flying. Chen would tell young pilots learning to execute these tributes. It's an opportunity to honor colleagues who made the ultimate sacrifice while demonstrating the values that define military service. Her approach to memorial flights emphasized the personal responsibility each pilot carried when representing fallen colleagues during their final symbolic flights. Chen understood that these ceremonies provided comfort to grieving families while inspiring continued dedication among surviving service members. The memorial flight for Rodriguez had demonstrated that recognition often came through service to others rather than self-promotion, and that the most meaningful tributes emerged from genuine respect and dedication rather than formal assignment or protocol. Chen's story became part of Air Force heritage, illustrating how overlooked personnel could reveal their true value through dedication to missions that honored others rather than seeking personal advancement. The missing man formation had provided both closure for Rodriguez's colleagues and recognition for Chen's previously underappreciated capabilities. Technical Sergeant Rodriguez's legacy lived on through the memorial that had honored his service and the career progression it had inspired for Chen, demonstrating that service and sacrifice could continue influencing others long after a service member's final mission. The missing man formation remained one of military aviation's most moving traditions, with Chen's precise execution during Rodriguez's memorial serving as a standard for future tributes that would honor other fallen airmen with equal dignity and professionalism. Her experience proved that dedication to honoring others often revealed qualities that had been previously overlooked, and that the most profound recognition sometimes came through service rather than self-advancement. The memorial flight had transformed both how others viewed Chen's capabilities and how she understood her own potential for leadership and influence. The ceremony that had begun with silence concluded with a new understanding of how service and recognition could intersect in unexpected ways, creating moments of tribute that honored the past while inspiring future dedication to the values that defined military service at its finest.